Preston, thank you so much for joining us. It's still been under a week since WAGMI United took control of the club. How has your first week been?
Oh man, it's been a whirlwind. Look, it's there's a lot to do. It's interesting. It was a long process to actually get the acquisition through. And part of your mindset is, okay, like we did it, we're at the finish line, but actually you realize you were actually just at the starting line. So we have a lot to do going forward, but we're excited. And honestly, I've been really receptive to a lot of the supporters, both the positive and negative feedback. It's helpful. So that'll be kind of a theme, I think, of our convo here, but we're open to all ideas, all thoughts, and we're going to try to, integrate them into our process for the club moving forward.
Yeah, the fans are certainly excited to get to know you. What should they know about you that maybe they can't read on your Twitter page or that they haven't seen already?
Sure. Good question. So I am married. I have a wife and some kids. I have a third child on the way, due in July. As far as interests outside of sport and football, my background in analytics and betting, which people are familiar with to some extent. I was a TV analyst on ESPN for a few years covering sports. That was a blast. I love music. Music is why I had food on my table growing up. My dad worked in the music industry. So I played drums growing up in a bunch of like punk rock bands, and I still write music here and there for fun with friends. So that's a little bit more about me, but always open to talking to other people. We'll get to know each other. I'm going to be there starting at the end of the month for an extended period of time, living in Crawley and playing. I've already DM'd with probably 50 supporters, and I want to meet everybody. And it'll be a good time. We'll get to know each other, I promise.
Yeah, you briefly mentioned football there. What's your background like with football? Because obviously there's been a couple of fans saying, these guys are American. Do they know much about football? So what is your sort of background with football?
Sure. So my introduction to football, I played as a kid. Briefly, I was horrible. So it lasted a couple of years, and that was it. And then I started playing basketball more, which is common in America. But my real introduction to where I grew a love for football. So I had the opportunity to live in Portugal for a few years when I was 20 and 21 years old. And I was doing a church mission there. And so they throw you in and you have to speak to everybody and you have to learn the language. And for the first 8 or 9 months, it was really hard for me to pick up Portuguese and just speak fluent Portuguese to everybody. But the one thing that I could connect with that resonated with me was football. It's life outside of America. Like football is life. The youth, the kids, they all played it. And so that was one thing that I was able to connect with for my, about the first half of my time there in Portugal. Afterwards, I was able to learn the language. I was able to connect with the culture and the people. And I found it was interesting. So when I left and came back to the States to study at university, and by the way, I guess something else to add, my background is in sports psychology. I have a master's degree in sports psychology. So another get to know you thing. But I found myself rooting for Portugal in like the World Cup and the Euro Cup more than the United States. And so I think it was 2016, Portugal won the Euro Cup. That was pretty cool. But the highlight moment was Saturday overall when Kwesi put up the W for WAGMI, and we're like, all right, the footballers got our backs. So that's at the top of the list now.
Yeah, we're kicking off with the fan questions. The first one that a lot of people want to know is why Crawley? Out of all the clubs that you could have possibly got, why have you chosen this club?
Sure. So, we chose Crawley Town because we believe the club has a ton of untapped potential that just hasn't been realized yet using the conventional ownership model. And we think we can take it to the next level. It's important, though, for us that Crawley Town is a community club, and we're committed to that. We want to keep it a community club. I know we've had plenty of questions about the details there, and we'll be able to get into more. But the thing that stuck out to me most when I came by and visited in the past, and I was able to meet with you guys as well a couple of times. But we had great convos with you, with Tom and John, just the club staff throughout during the takeover process. It's clear all of you guys are dedicated to the club. This is your life. You bleed red. And it's also, the way the supporters feel. And so we're excited to try out some of the new ideas, not only the ones that we personally have and want to bring to the table, but the current staff there. Like, you guys have all these ideas you want to integrate. You've been held back a little bit. We're open to all of them. We want to integrate the ones that we think makes the most sense. And that's what we're looking forward to most.
Yeah, lots of the press have described this as maybe an experiment. Do you see it like that, or do you see it completely differently?
Yeah, experiment's a it's a tricky word. So as a whole, Crawleytown FC is not an experiment to us. Going back to what I was saying before, the conventional approach to running a club in the EFL, it just doesn't really work. Most clubs, including this one, lose hundreds of thousands of pounds per year, and then the results, aren't really seen on the pitch, and that's just not an acceptable status quo for us. So we want to try and experiment with a few new ideas to the existing structure and foundation that already exists, and we want to find the ones that will work. And specifically, one of those, the big ones, is, hey, they're going to build and bring a digital community of supporters and fans from all around the world. Yeah, that's what we want to go for. That's going to be part of it. We can get into some more of those details as well. But that'll give us an opportunity to take Crawleytown FC as a whole to compete with the likes of League One, potentially Championship League clubs, down the road.
Yeah, and that brings us nicely onto some of the confusion that fans may have seen with the press. Obviously, there were reports that the club was bought with cryptocurrency and that the club is going to rely on cryptocurrency to survive. Is that how it works? I'll let you explain more because you're going to know a lot more than me.
Sure. There's been quite a bit of misinformation on this front. So first off, we did not buy the club in cryptocurrency. We bought Crawleytown FC, acquired it in cash. It's pretty straightforward in that sense. The club is not tied or attached to the volatility of crypto itself. The next thing too, which I hope gives some people and offers them comfort, we had to pass all of the EFL's tests and their checks to be considered fit and proper owners for the club. That included a ton of financial due diligence to ensure the club wouldn't be, at the risk of ruin after the first season, right? Like we've put in funds extra to that matter to cover expected losses for multiple seasons going forward. If that wasn't the case, we never would have been able to be cleared by the EFL to require the club in the first place. So that should be helpful, hopefully comfort some people. But I know crypto is like a scary word, NFTs, no one really knows what they are. Hopefully, people understand this is still pretty formal. We've done it on a traditional way. We're just trying to bring some cool concepts and add them to, again, the structure that already exists.
Yeah, you mentioned the NFT space. Obviously, it's well reported that that's something that you want to explore. How do you see that working, particularly in the light of the likes of Liverpool, who released their range and they didn't go so well? So is that different to Liverpool, what we plan to do you think?
Totally. So here's the biggest difference, and I think it'll be helpful for supporters to grasp. Big clubs like Liverpool, they're trying to sell NFTs to their existing fans who, let's be honest, don't even want NFTs to begin with. All right, that's not going to be a recipe for success. The people who do want NFTs, they see it for what it is, right? Which is a transparent cash grab by an already wealthy club. And we've seen that, by the way, in America as well with like NBA teams. They try to do NFTs. It just doesn't really work out trying to force NFTs on your existing fans. So what we're trying to do is different. We're not trying to sell NFTs to Crawleytown supporters. That would be crazy and arrogant, to be honest. We're bringing a professional football club, Crawleytown FC, to people who already love NFTs, to NFT fans. And they build these passionate digital communities. Actually, this is pretty funny. I've heard it all week, since the announcement was made, everyone's making fun of digital cartoon JPEGs, right? Like these guys, what are NFTs? And honestly, Eben and I actually make fun of these like cartoon animal JPEGs too, because these digital communities that have been built around NFTs have grown to be pretty extraordinary, and they've built businesses on them. And these are cartoon pictures, okay? We have a real professional football club now that we can build and have a rallying NFT digital audience that's just going to give us, we hope and expect, an outsized advantage relative to, the pre-existing revenue stream. So if we were able to capture that and we get this passionate digital community on board, they're going to be able to build and help this grow. And so that's the key. That I think the difference between some of those bigger clubs or professional franchises in America that have failed. We're bringing a professional team to the NFT fans. We're not going to force anything on the current fans.
Yeah, so moving on slightly, several fans noted that in the previous ownership, the club had incurred some debts. Can you sort of shed some more light on that situation?
Sure. Maybe not entirely in detail. So, but I mean, I guess some of you guys maybe already know about some of them, but we absolutely plans are in place to retire the club's current debts. We expect that that's going to happen pretty shortly, and that'll be it'll shore up, the financial footing for the club as a whole, and it'll put us in a really good position to grow and move forward. And so, yeah, absolutely, that will be kind of crazy how far back some of the debts go, and so those will be rectified pretty soon.
Yeah, you guys have set the ambitious target of being promoted to League One by your second full season, and you've said that if that doesn't happen, the fans will have the decision to decide whether you've done a good enough job and whether you should keep your roles. And there's been confusion around this, because what does that mean? I'm sure you can shed a lot more light on it. But what does that look like? Does that mean that you just pack up and sell the club, or does that mean that you and Evan step aside and somebody else gets another go at it?
Great question. Another point of confusion that we can clear up. So the short answer is no, we're not going to sell the club. WAGMI United's here for the long haul. Okay. And like, I was alluding to earlier, we are going to be good stewards of the club and ensure it remains alive and well in the community for a long time. The longer answer, to kind of help people see where we're coming from with this. Eben and I were the new co-directors for Crawley Town FC, right? But we represent the WAGMI United ownership group. And one thing that we've seen so frequently in sport as a whole is a lack of accountability from owners. One story that Eben likes to tell a lot, which I'll tell you guys, why not? So he won't get mad at me. He's a big New York Knicks fan. He's from New York. James Dolan's the owner for the Knicks. He's been the owner running the franchise into mediocrity for 30 years running. But he's a rich owner. He gets to be the owner of the Knicks if he wants to. There's no accountability. It's the scapegoat. It ends up being the head coach or the manager, the general manager. They throw everyone else under the bus. So what's interesting is, so then you have like acquisitions like this, which you guys see in the EFL, and everyone's allowed to say, hey, we're going to get promoted in a few years, or we're going to reach championship in 5 years. There's no downside or accountability to that. And that's kind of BS to us. So if we're going to say, hey, we want to be promoted in 2 years, we think that, it's important that we're accountable to you guys, to the supporters. And so that is the case. And so now alluding to, I guess, the specifics of your question. Yeah, if we're not promoted to League One after our second season, then we think it should be up to the community and the supporters whether or not we stay in as our role as directors. That doesn't mean that WAGMI United is going to sell the club, but what it does mean is that other members of our ownership group will be able to propose detailed plans and strategies for running the club that could be chosen instead. And so the supporters will be able to vote accordingly. Now, maybe Eben and I have done enough at that point to improve fan experience, the club infrastructure, revenue streams, that even despite promotion, the supporters want us back regardless. I certainly hope that's the case, because I want to be here forever. But we're ready to step down otherwise if that's what the community wants.
Yeah, that leads us on nicely to my next point. There's been a lot of, it's also well documented that you want the fans to be more involved with decision making. How do you see that working? Because obviously that's not unheard of for the fans, but if they're going to be given a lot of responsibility, how do you see that working?
Sure. So first off, let's start with this. We want to make sure that football people are deeply involved in the actual football decisions. We want the absolute smartest football minds in our room. That includes the staff that's already there. It includes new staff that we might bring in. And then, to be completely honest, we've already been working with outside consultants that have significant football expertise since January. And so this is going to be a collaborative decision-making process that will be in place at the end of the day. Whatever the final call is, as directors for Eben and I, will be held accountable for that. Actually, if you've read any of the interviews, Eben will probably just blame me. He'll say it's my fault. I'll be there pretty frequently, but that's fine. But in terms of decisions for the actual supporters and fans, we want to open this up to everyone else, and we're going to learn and figure some stuff out, exactly how that's going to look. But it's not going to be, hey, let's vote on who the starting 11 is on match day this week, right? It's going to be more big picture issues. It's going to be for things that are attached to the fan experience itself. And so we think those subject matters are important, but we're going to leave a lot of the football decision-making to the manager or some of the experts that we have in-house. But we do believe that the fans should have a voice. And so this community club that includes those who have been supporting the club for years, those that are going to be new fans to the club, will continue to strive to find the right balance and bring all the viewpoints and include all those in our decision-making process as well.
Yeah, so you mentioned obviously that you want the fans to be more involved with the decision-making. Is it something that you guys have considered to obviously have maybe like a fan representation maybe on the board? Is that something you've considered?
Yeah, we got a lot of questions about this already. The truth is, we haven't made a decision yet on what the board is going to look like. We want to be extremely thoughtful and deliberate, and make sure that we're evaluating in a way that gives us, optimizes our decision-making process and sets us up for long-term success. So we're not going to rush to appoint a board until we've really done that evaluation. But fan involvement, we can get to this now. I know this is something that Eben wanted to talk about regardless pretty soon. Again, that's essential for us, no matter, if it's locally, universally, but especially locally in Crawley. We want to set up a fan council that we speak with on a regular basis that can offer up feedback and give us different ideas on how we can improve the club and weigh in on some decisions. And so if you're listening now and you're interested in being a part of the fan council, please reach out to us. In fact, we want people to send in short, like 2 to 3 minute videos. Tell us about yourselves. Tell us why you're a Crawley Town FC fan or supporter, and then tell us why you deserve to be on the fan council. We're going to listen and watch every single one, and we want to find those that we think we jive with and we can work with to improve it. The fan experience, operations, ultimately the results on the pitch.
Many fans have been asking about the future of John Yims. Obviously, we've seen it before in football when new owners have come in, they've shaken things up. How do you see John's future at the club?
Look, he's an absolute character. I think some of you probably remember that retweet about Superman and crypto from last week's press conference. Like the Yems gems are going to be great. So looking forward to hearing more of those. I think the thing that stood out the most about John to us is the fact that he's consistently outperformed expectations relative to the club's wage bill, with one of the lower wage bills in the league. Crawley Town's finishing middle of the table. And so that ultimately means one of 3 things. The first is that John is able to get more out of the players and the current talent than an average manager would. Second would be that him, along with Erdem, have been great talent evaluators, right? They're able to find better talent for the price they're paying. And 3 is just variance. That's probably a word you guys will need to get used to, but ultimately it's just randomness over 2 seasons, right? Like maybe Crawley Town's just been a little bit lucky. And it's probably a combination of all 3. If you dig into some of the metrics, I believe Crawley Town has a negative goal differential this year, but they're ahead of some other clubs that have a goal differential of plus 12, let's say. And it's no secret that a mid-table finish, though, isn't good enough, right? Like going forward, we have bigger ambitions, higher expectations for that. So if you listen to John at the press conference last week, I think it's clear he understands that the bar has been raised, and we're looking forward to bringing more resources to the club, and then that'll make John's job hopefully easier on the pitch, so that we can all embrace that challenge together.
We're not that far away now from the transfer window. It'll obviously be your first transfer window. What are your plans for that transfer window? Because obviously there was reports in the conference last week that the wage bill is going to go up. So what do you think will happen in that transfer window?
Sure. I bet everyone would like to know. The truth of the matter is we're going to be evaluating the best possible opportunities that we have now through the summer and beyond. And I already referenced this. We've been optimizing for this roster construction since January with our internal team or in our football operations team. It's been hard to have those conversations directly with Crawley Town FC and the staff in earnest until the deal was done. But now that we have taken control, we look forward to working with Tom and John and the rest of the staff to make more concrete decisions. And when more information comes out and we're able to share firmer details, we will. We want to be pretty transparent and open things up and be open to the community and the supporters. But for now, I think that's all I can say. But we think we'll be spending more than Crawley Town FC did last year. We can leave it at that for now.
We've had a lot of questions come in about the match day experience at the ground and how you plan to sort of improve that. We've had questions regarding the expansion of the west stand, the east stand. There's been questions about the food. There's been questions even about, can you fix the basic things like the hand dryer and the men's toilets in the west stand? How do you see the evolution of the match day experience at the club?
So I've actually, there's this long running joke you guys have about the hand dryer. Actually, we're having a discussion about it in Discord over the weekend, I think. And while it seems like a no-brainer to fix as soon as possible, a few mentioned a quote, something to the likes of, I almost don't want to fix it because of the joke. Like, you guys have grown to embrace the joke, but they use the word almost. So I'm guessing they ultimately do want us to get it fixed. We probably should do that and then like hold a ceremony and like cut a ribbon and let everyone go use the toilet or something. But I mean, to be serious, we want to improve the fan experience in every way we possibly can. And, you know, when fans take the time to come down and spend their Saturday at the grounds for a match, it needs to be a good experience that they can, you know, relate to. And we plan to make that as great of an experience as it possibly can be. We're willing to put everything on the table. I've kind of referenced that a few times, but types of food that's available, number of lines available. A few people have talked about just needing more servers even at halftime so we can get through the lines more quickly. Different entertainment on site, potentially even the pricing for tickets. We're going to be talking with the ticketing people there locally in staff in the club. We'll look at everything, reach out to us. You have thoughts, ideas, feedback, because we want to listen to it all.
Yeah, we've got hundreds of questions and we didn't have time to answer them all. But one of the big ones was, what do you plan to do to get more people to the stadium, to sort of reach out? There's been a lot of, we've had complaints over the last, you know, couple of years saying that we don't market the club enough. How do you plan on reaching that wider community, the wider Crawley community, and getting people into the stadium?
Sure. There's, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind for me always, and I know it's easier said than done, but I think first and foremost, we have to put a winning team on the pitch. I know John and the boys are doing their absolute best with what they have right now. But if we can give them more to work with from a resource perspective and turn some things around, then I think that's going to get more supporters there, engaging locally in the community, as well as, you know, at the matches on Saturdays. I think John, I don't want to misspeak for him. He had a quote the other day in his press conference. I actually really liked it as like a tagline, almost for what we believe as a WAGMI United group. It was something to the essence of, we've got to give the fans something worth cheering about. And so I think that's job number one. And the second is kind of all the extracurriculars, you know, I was referencing a little bit earlier, you know, when they do take the time, you guys, to come down to the grounds, you know, we have to make sure that you have a great experience and want to come back again. And we're willing to put everything on the table. There's one thing in particular that Tom and I have discussed. There's an ambulance unit, for example. This is just one thing off the top of my head that I feel like I can share. People, again, feel free to throw ideas back at us as well. They lease that big space in the parking lot. I believe it runs until May. So he has had this kind of long running plan to utilize that space going forward for next season. Tailgating is a big thing. Don't laugh at us, but like, tailgating is a big thing in the United States. But that concept of, hey, let's bring in some food trucks before matches on game day. Let's have some activities for kids or youth. There's the little pitch there too in the parking lot where people can play. Like, let's have people coming in a few hours earlier, engaging, just hanging out, if you want to use like a more slang term. But like that's important. We think this should be a match day experience, not just arriving, being there for 90 minutes and then leaving. And so there's some opportunities there, and we're going to work together to find the ones that hit. Yeah,
as I said, we've had hundreds of questions. We feel like we've picked out the most important ones, but obviously people are going to be saying, oh, you haven't answered my question. There's still questions unanswered. But as you said, you are over towards the end of the month. We are planning to do a fans forum. And as you said,
yes,
your DMs are open. If you have any suggestions, if you have any burning questions, I suppose the message is, fans, feel free to DM you, and I'm sure you'll do your best to answer them in the meantime. But yeah, it'll be exciting to obviously have a chat with the wider fan base in person when you're over. But for the meantime, thank you very much. It's been great chatting. It's cleared up a lot of questions, and I'm sure people just can't wait to see what the future holds.
Totally. Thank you, Sam. I appreciate it.
Thank you.